Let's get ready to rumble. On Friday, November 21st, 2025, Cullen Kelly, in addition to a Q&A live stream, posted a video breaking down the proper way to emulate film and a color managed workflow inside DaVinci Resolve, using the exact method he used to create his own Kodak 2383 LUT. This is the same LUT I talked about in my Windows 10 EOL trilogy and dedicated a whole video to with Thanks a Lot. I'm not going to break it down as extensively as Cullen did. I strongly recommend that you watch his video. What I will take from it, though, is that Cullen explains that film is display referred and color management is scene referred. And Cullen has spent years reconciling that fact. He says even after all this, it's a compromise. The image will only ever look as good as it did before. It will never look better. Also, contrary to a conventional digital workflow and some of the film emulations you may have seen, proper film emulation requires not just a positive but a negative, just like real film. You can't have a film image without a negative. It's just how film works. That's not to say that reversal film such as Ektachrome and Kodachrome doesn't exist, but that's beyond the scope of Cullen's thesis. I mentioned in my earlier videos that it didn't use ACEs. Well, this manual film emulation requires ACEs and ADX to create the negative and positive. Then afterwards you apply your LUT. Those are your three basic ingredients. But how do you get this to work with color management? If you apply both a film print and a DRT, the two will clash like the Hatfields and the McCoys. So this is where you add a pre-inversion. Normally Cullen advises against this, but you do a color space transform from Rec 709 into DaVinci White Gamut. You're going from a display space into a scene referred log space. I already do this at the beginning anyway, since my original camera footage is already Rec 709, and I get better results from it than if I went into Blender and converted it to Cineon film log. Trust me. Compare my short film Hello It's Me to the mosquito bite. Another quirk in all this is that my pre-inversion and my DRT must be symmetrical. This pre-inversion only works with Resolve's default CST, the Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. It will not work the same way if you instead use something like OpenDRT or 2499. It will change the image some, but with Cullen's Genesis plugin, you don't have to do any of this. It only outputs to a display space, which is actually better. But wait, isn't Genesis like super expensive unless you want a watermark? Yes and yes, but Cullen in his video offers the perfect free alternative, and it's right under your nose. Simply turn off the last two nodes. You don't need them. Now I decided to test this out myself. I already have Cullen's Kodak 2383 LUT, and I also recently downloaded Cullen's Fuji 3510 LUT, which he doesn't cover in his emulation video, but he did make a whole video about. What you're about to see are comparison images between the manual emulation with and without the DRT versus Cullen's 2383 LUT versus his Fuji LUT. In addition, I applied an MFT film softness technique I learned from Marietta Farfarova. And for grain, I used the film grain effect in Fusion. First, I took a random throwaway outtake from Thanks a LUT. It's only an outtake because I forgot to record mic sound. I was going to compare Cullen's Fuji 3510 LUT to one I thought was built into Resolve, but I took a closer look and realized the Resolve Fuji LUTs are actually a different stock. 3513 Di. So that wouldn't be an apples to apples comparison. But you know what? For the hell of it, here's what that looks like anyway, using the same manual film emulation. Caveat: since I converted from Blender to a separate test not relevant to Cullen's thesis, the interlacing from the original footage got baked in. Lesson learned. Also, if I had wanted to go further with the color grade, I would have cooled it off a bit and worked on my secondary adjustments. But again, that's beyond the scope. Then for a higher quality image, I took a clip from the mosquito bite. Now using Marietta's MTF instead of the Gaussian blur I used before, ended up changing the colors and made the grade more neutral. So I used an additional balance node to bring the blue tones back. On Wednesday, November 24th, I discovered that my display was set to full RGB instead of limited. And this may have influenced my Windows 10 era, here we go again. Windows 11 era grading, live it and learn. Even crazier, I discovered on Thanksgiving that Windows still reverts to the default calibration upon restart, just like it did on Windows 10. So I have to pull up my display settings, show only on 1 and 2, then back to duplicate. It'll probably be a pain in the ass for years to come, but why do we artists have to suffer like this? Why can't TVs, monitors, and displays of all kinds just be automatically calibrated and stay so to save everybody's sanity? Why can't everything just have filmmaker mode? But I digress. Now, after recalibrating, I can make a more honest assessment of my grading. And I can honestly say, and this is the kicker, all of the images look more or less the same. That said, Cullen's Kodak 2383 LUT has a little bit stronger contrast, but the colors are otherwise identical. The Fuji 3510 is designed to have a more modest contrast and can often skew green, especially when underexposed. Like, think the first Hunger Games movie, which was shot on Fuji Eterna 8546 and 8547. and unspecified Kodak film stock. The last Kodak Vision 2 stock, 5201, 7201, was discontinued in 2012, the year the movie was released. Meanwhile, Kodak Vision 3 was introduced in 2007, starting with 5219, 7219. The Hunger Games was printed onto Fuji Film Eterna CP type 3514 DI, not 1314. And during the writing of this video, Cullen announced another plugin, Compass, that's designed to work with film scans like actual film. I also learned in an email Monday that color slice is Cullen's preferred saturation. Previously, he had given HSV the edge. That said, Cullen, at least at the time, wasn't a fan of color slice's skin adjustments, calling them too narrow and more likely to break your image. For transparency, I want to confirm that for this video, I used color slice instead of my usual HSV. Except on the outtake, I didn't use any saturation boost. Are we clear on that? When I made Hello It's Me, I used a little bit of both. I converted my footage to film log from Blender and brought it into Resolve. This may have been a mistake on my part. I found that I get much better results bringing my Rec 709 camera footage straight into Resolve. Also, Resolve handles deinterlacing better. It's possible this conversion forced me to do more grading than I would have needed to, and the conversion and deinterlacing gave me a less refined image. It lacks detail. Again, live and learn. Now I think I have everything I may ever need going forward on my next short film. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I've done some brainstorming. We'll see how that goes. Until then, take care.